Welcome to the CannaBiz Success Show. If you're a cannabis company owner or operator who's ready to scale your business, grow your profits, and plant the seeds to take your business to new heights, this show is for you. We'll share expert insights, industry trends, and actionable strategies to help you blaze a trail of success in the cannabis industry.
Welcome to the Cannabis Success Show. Today we're talking about cultivation, the cultivation piece of the supply chain, more specifically tissue culture services within the cannabis sector. We have Kevin Brooks, who's a visionary entrepreneur. He's the CEO and founder of Conception Nurseries. Conception is a supplier of cannabis plants, and they're the sole provider of commercial scale multi-state tissue culture services within the cannabis sector. And they hold the distinction of being the largest cannabis plant provider globally. And so this was a fascinating episode, Brett, something that we really have not gotten into. I loved what he has to say about the future of cannabis, really moving away from vertical integration. So for our listeners, just make sure you listen to that piece of it. But what was your take on it, Brett?
It was fascinating talking to Kevin. I mean, I could talk about, the ag side of things and cultivation side of things all day long, and some of the innovative work and stuff that they're doing on their end. So it was interesting to kind of hear about, get away from the financial side of things a little bit and hear a little bit more about this is a plant, right? And we are growing a plant, and as a part of that, it is a living organism, and it takes care and cultivation, and it has its own genetics and things like that come out of it. And there's things that you can do to improve those genetics and testing and everything to make sure that you are getting the highest quality plant that you can get. And it was fantastic talking to him about, kind of the work that they're doing in that space, and to make sure that that the industry as a whole has legitimate, safe, product to consume. So,
yeah, I mean, I love what he has to say about how some of this can help the industry, because on top of an industry that's already challenged, being able to eliminate some of the risks around pesticides, and just the way he overall described, just, on a very basic level, how cannabis is different from other commodities, I think is just really fascinating. So just really make sure you stick around to the end. He really gets into, I know, Brett, you liked the plant side. He did kind of touch on the end on the metrics and really financially how you can look at this and see if it's something that you want to do as a cultivator. That's what's coming up next on the Cannabis Success Show, and enjoy the episode. Welcome to the Cannabis Success Show. Today I'm joined by my co-host, Brett Adams. Brett, how you doing today?
I'm good, Guillermo. It's good to be back on after the holiday and stuff like that. I got a chance to recoup and re-energize, so I'm rearing and ready to go. How about you?
Yeah, it was a nice little break. I didn't know I needed it, but it was much needed.
Always.
Let's get to meet our guest. We have a really exciting episode today, because we are joined by Kevin Brooks. He's the CEO and founder of Conception Nurseries. They're a leader in the cannabis industry and a supplier of cannabis plants, and the sole provider of commercial scale multi-state tissue culture services within the cannabis sector. And that's a mouthful. So we're going to want to break down and get into what exactly is tissue culture. But Kevin, before we get into that, we always like to just start. Can you give us your background, more personally, just how you got into the cannabis space?
Oh, yeah. Look, I began my professional career in tech in Silicon Valley. Ended up had a few partners. We sold our company to a private equity-backed competitor, and eventually sold that to a publicly traded company. And just woke up one day and didn't want to do the large Bay Area tech deal, and moved the family out to the Sacramento region. And I ended up linking up with a guy who I went to college with, who I think candidly sold me weed in college, and he really just kind of stayed in the game, had a couple of dispensaries, known for growing super premium cannabis. And this was right around 2015. So if you remember, Colorado had just passed adult use, recreation. Oregon and Washington were right behind it. And it was only a matter of time before California caught up. And so I sat down with Caleb Counts, who's the owner and founder of Connected Cannabis. And we just talked about what the future would look like of cannabis in California. And after several meetings and just discussions around kind of where the industry is going and how they're positioned, I ended up stepping into CEO. At the time, they were just, again, a couple of dispensaries and a grow. And we took that business and met Berner, signed the first kind of licensing plant touching entity for cookies. And so we were really the cultivation, manufacturing, distribution, retail arm for cookies. So we rebranded our stores Cookies and had a great relationship with Berner. And over the course of a few years, Berner wanted to take Cookies one direction. Caleb and his partner Luke wanted to take their company another direction. So we rebranded the company Connected Cannabis. And Connected, again, is now a multi-state operator, super premium. And I think during my time with Cookies and Connected, it became very clear to me that the supply chain was broken, right? And it was broken in two different ways. On one hand, you had a plant that was, relatively immature, has never been studied for large-scale commercial agronomic traits. On the other hand, you had the technology, and by technology, you could refer to what the LED lighting industry has done over the last several years. Right? When I first got into cannabis, everyone used HPS, the Gavitas, right? And the lighting company has done a really great job of converting that customer base and those growers over into LED lights. And that technology piece spans across all areas of cannabis supply chain, whether it's designing HVAC or dehumidification systems for growers that are cannabis specific versus what we had to buy that were just designed for other types of agronomic or different types of agriculture environments, all the way through to retail store POS systems, which really didn't exist, right? So, I think what I identified pretty quickly was that the technology piece of it, whether it was lights or fertigation system or HVAC or hardware, software, it existed outside of cannabis. It would eventually pivot into the space and be customized for our industry. What was going to take a long time to design and was very complex is the plant itself, and that's really what brought me to launch and get involved with Conception. And it's really about fixing that broken piece of supply chain, which is that very front end of having clean, consistent, performance trial plants that growers can count on in every harvest. And that's really kind of the thesis and what brought us to Conception.
And, California, Oregon's known as the capital of the world in terms of premium cannabis, right? And you're saying this problem, despite California's reputation or growing conditions, was still present in these markets, right? It wasn't a state-specific problem or anything like that?
No, I mean, look, there's certainly different ways to think about it, right? On one hand, you have most growers who utilize their mother room, right? And those mother rooms are a vector for pest and disease, regardless of what state you're in. You have issues like HLVD, where we're seeing it really spread around not just the West Coast, but really around the entire world. I was in Cannabis a few months ago, and the issues that we're facing, that we faced here in California, are some of the same challenges they're facing around the world: hop latens, viroid. So the demand for clean genetics, the cost, the expense, the risk to the business around mother rooms is a universal problem. And then you think about just plant degradation over time, right? If you have a mother plant and you take cuts off that mother plant and you replace it, right? That mother plant that gets replaced will be 99%, 99.5% like the original mother, but it's not 100%. And over time, you start to see this degradation in plant performance. And then it's this hockey stick kind of drop off. And so the only way to rejuvenate your plants or rejuvenate your stock, whether you're buying production clones or you're buying mom stock clones, the way to get it back to its original health and vigor is through tissue culture, banking those genetics long term.
Can you talk about mother rooms, because that may not be as familiar for those who are in other agricultural sectors, and how cannabis works and how it's different? Can you describe what are mother rooms and tissue culture, just more of a basic understanding of it?
Sure. me take a step back. Let's just say, for argument's sake, the three of us go out and we start a blueberry farm. And we're based in, I don't know, Portland, Oregon. We decide, hey, it's Brett, Kevin, Guillermo's blueberry farm. We go out, we raise some money, or we do it ourselves. We built this big, beautiful farm. Bring in a bunch of automation. Where do we get the genetics? Right? If you're in cannabis, you kind of get them from some guy, right? Because nurseries don't really exist. Traditional nurseries don't really exist. And so, we would go out to a company like Driscoll's or some of the other large berry groups, and we'd say, hey, here's our longitude, here's our latitude, here's the kind of blueberries we're trying to get. We want half our farm to be big, luscious farmers market blueberry. We want half our farm to be, freeze-dried, small blueberries that we can ship around the world, right? We wouldn't go to just some guy. We would go to a company that specializes in genetics for our specific regions, that design genetics or provide genetics for a very specific cause, right? And they look at our soil and longitude, latitude, all that. In cannabis, you can't really, it really isn't nurseries that have existed historically that you can go back to and buy plants from that are designed for your specific region. So what you've seen is legacy growers that have had to go out and get their genetics from breeders or from their buddies or from some guy. And because they can't go back to the well every harvest, they store them in-house. And these in-house nurseries are essentially called mother rooms. And most growers around the world have their own in-house mother rooms. And these mother rooms are a huge risk and an expense to the business. It is a highly specialized employee that runs these. They're heavy CapEx, heavy OpEx. Most growers want to grow, really great product. They also don't want to manage their own in-house nurseries. And so that's where we really step in, is we help them outsource it. We allow them to turn that risk center, that cost center, into a profit center, and by supplying either their mother plants or supplying in production clones.
Can you talk a little bit more of how you essentially eliminate that risk through outsourcing that function?
Yeah, so I think one of the value props that Conception brings to the table is our plants are delivered in hermetically sealed containers directly from our lab, right? So our growers have a high level of confidence that the plants are clean. They're not coming in with a bunch of pests, right? So we've got a very large customer here in Sacramento that we've done a lot of business with over the years. They have brought our plants in-house. They've grown them up. They've noticed, hey, not only do these plants outperform what we have in-house, but it's also reducing our cost. And so we'd like to buy more of your plants. And over time, they've got comfortable enough that they've unwound their own internal nursery and rely 100% on Conception to provide their clean stock. So that's an example of a group that has spent a tremendous amount of money and time on automation, on putting out fires around pest breakouts and IPM management, integrated pest management expenses, and decided, hey, this is a solution that works and de-risks our business. And when we look at it on paper, it makes sense to outsource this. And then they turn their mother room or their in-house nursery into an actual flower room. So now they're generating revenue from it.
More production. Yeah.
So Kevin, one of the big news stories right now in California, especially, is the pesticide issue. Right, they're finding high levels of pesticides in some of the pre-rolls and stuff like that are on the shelves. In some cases, well above what's allowed by the EPA. So what kind of work are you guys doing in that space? How are you guys innovating in that area to avoid that kind of contamination?
So we can guarantee that the plants that we're putting out in the market don't have any kind of pesticides that are as clean as you'll ever get from a nursery. If you go on our website and you look at our menu, you can click on the items on our menu, which will hyperlink you to the most recent testing. We work very closely with the university here to validate all of our testing. We do our in-house and then third party and then the university. So for us, testing plants when we give them to growers is critical. After the growers take them in-house, what happens after that, we don't have a lot of control over, but we can guarantee that they will get the best starts from Conception.
So it sounds like you guys are more focused on the inception of the plant itself, and then the farmers and stuff like that go out and do what they need to do for the growers to grow the actual plant for retail sale and production.
That's exactly right. It's my understanding that we are the largest supplier of cannabis plants in the world. Our plants, however, are only 3.5 inches big. So it's large, high volume, high volume, very developed root ball, clean, pest and disease-free plants.
So Kevin, I really enjoy like lawn care and stuff like that. That's just part of my passion, right? So those producers and growers of seeds and I guess what you can consider to be the equivalent of mother plant suppliers like yourself in the cannabis space, they're doing a lot of testing on like cold hardiness and drought tolerance and things like. Are you guys doing any kind of testing in that space too?
Yeah, great question. So that's really more of an agronomic trait. So that's typically what you would see with some of these more advanced breeders. We're not a breeder. We're not in the breeding business. That said, we are working with groups that are interested or entering that space where they're looking to improve the performance of a plant. So the idea would be down the road, we could supply some of these groups with our genetics and ask for them to improve the agronomic traits. Great examples: pest resistance, drought resistance. We do note what plants perform well in different environments, and we'll steer our customer base that way. Like, not every plant will perform in every environment the same. So we run extensive performance trials. It takes us, if we do meristem culturing on a plant, which is essentially cutting the heart of the plant, it's the healthiest part of a plant, it could take us a year from the time we get the plant in to the time it gets out to customers. And so if we're going to make that kind of investment on an intake, on a specific cultivar, we want to make sure that it performs at commercial scale and that it has enough customer demand. And we've learned our lesson taking plants through that, maybe had a little bit of hype and just never really took off, right? That was a big expense for us, a big learning lesson. And then we've had plants that have come through that have a ton of hype, but they really just don't perform at commercial scale. And so for us, it's about finding that balance.
Awesome.
Yeah. So Kevin, you mentioned a couple of things. One is just the improvement from having the extra space from eliminating the mother room, and then there's the actual improvement on the quality. How many when someone's like coming to you and they're trying to make this decision, what are the things that you're looking at in terms of metrics? At the end of the day, it's the financial side, right? And what someone like coming to you would have to look at to see, okay, what's going to be the difference for this financially? How can I make that assessment essentially? Like, what are some of the metrics that you're looking at when you're meeting with folks that are trying to make this decision?
Yeah, I mean, look, what we've been able to establish is by every measure of performance, a tissue culture, Gen 0 tissue culture plant directly from the lab will outperform one from traditional propagation. And outperform can mean a few different things, right? We're talking A's to B's ratio. We're talking overall yield. We're talking consistency with THC. We've seen, significant reductions in both labor and IPM. IPM because integrated pest management, less expenses because, right, you're dealing with a clean plant. You're not having to spend as much money on pest management. We've also seen that for outdoor growers, pests seem to like the plants that are a little more damaged or sick, right? Whereas a cleaner, healthier, more vigorous plant is less pest attention. The way that the bud structure works on the tissue culture plant, you see deeper light penetration, so higher A's to B's ratio, which commands a higher price point, the wholesale level. Less trimming. We try to find plants that maybe require less trimming or less work from a labor perspective. So across the board, I think we've got a 50-point or 40-point inspection when we run performance trials to ensure large-scale commercial agronomic traits.
So you're seeing significant improvements in the yields, and you're able to quantify that with past customers, share it, and where someone could really gather this information, put numbers to it, and see, evaluate the cost and see what the difference is going to be.
We have a white paper coming out later this month from a grower. So the hard part, the challenge in the past has been finding a cultivar that is grown from traditional propagation, right? It's a mom plant. And then taking that plant through tissue culture and comparing it to a Gen 0 tissue culture clone. And then growing that tissue culture clone up and taking cuts off it. So you've got a Gen 0 right out of the lab tissue culture clone. You've got a Gen 1 that came from that Gen 0, right? You take a cut off there. And then you have traditional propagation. And the study that we ran was amazing, right? So we'll have a white paper out later this month that highlights the difference between the Gen 0, Gen 1, and traditional propagation. But when I say we outperform at every level, we've got customers that we've gone to and said, hey, we're so confident in this product that we're willing to share some of the risk. So we'll sell you the plant at a predetermined price, a much lower price, but enjoy some of the upside when it overperforms. So we take on that risk for some of our customers.
Yeah, that's definitely something we want to include in the show notes, and depending on when the interview airs. But it'd be great to get that so we can include that, share with the listeners. You had another topic that you talked about, evolution from vertical integration to specialization. What do you mean when you say that?
I've been on a handful of panels, and they've asked me about my predictions for the future. And when you look at other agriculture industries, you don't see this kind of pressure for full vertical integration, right? You take states like Florida, which is an unbelievable state, huge opportunity, deep customer base, and this pressure to do every piece of the supply chain flawlessly is exceptionally difficult. And then when you look at the capital constraints that we have in this space, it makes it even more challenging. And so I think that part of what you're going to see in the future is less of a focus on full vertical integration and more of specialization. Like what we do at Conception, high output, healthy baby plants. It's not a new idea, right? We've seen, very large, well-funded, publicly traded companies in Canada attempt this and fail. We've seen groups, in the U.S. attempt this and fail. We have not seen another group that's been able to put out large-scale Gen Zero tissue culture plants. And the reason being is it's a highly, highly specialized part of the supply chain. And I think, the future of this industry to survive, especially if we're going to be capital constrained, is going to be leaning on folks that do one part of the supply chain exceptionally well.
Yeah, and you're referring there to Florida, where it's also required, right, by the various states, and I think Hawaii is another one of those, where even with some of this, I mean, you'll still see some states where it's required under the state program, right? Do you see any of that changing in the future? Or?
I don't know. I mean, it's nothing moves as quickly as you like to. My fingers crossed right now for rescheduling. But changing the requirements around full vertical integration, I think that's going to be a very heavy lift in specific states.
So Kevin, we've talked with a few people about jumping into the reschedule stuff. Like, I think it'll be a big benefit to the industry as a whole, but I'm not sure it's going to be the big boon that everybody thinks it's going to be. Do you have any thoughts or opinions on that?
Yeah, look, I think it will be meaningful, and it's a great step in the right direction. Right? It's exactly what the industry needs right now. Look, will new capital come in? Likely. They're going to be looking for deals and distressed assets, and I think there's going to be. We're not going to see the faucet turn on with new capital coming in immediately overnight. It's going to take some time to really see the benefit, but it's a great start, and it does infuse the industry. And it's what we need at this time. So I agree with you, Guillermo. I don't think it will be industry changing for the next 18 to 24 months, but I think it is the absolute step in the right direction.
We like to poll people on this. I mean, we've asked every time we have a guest, and when we talk to prospective clients, we do have about half and half. Some negativity that it's and I don't want to call it negativity. Maybe it's being realistic or what we've been through, that it will not happen this year. And I think we're hopeful. Do you have your 50-50 higher?
Look, I think if it happens,
look into your crystal ball for us.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we've all seen the debates. So I think our current administration is looking for a few wins. They can put in their sails. So this might be one of the aces in their back pocket they pushed through prior to the election. I'm not close enough to the politics to tell you. My gut says if we get it, if we are going to see rescheduling, it will likely happen this year. If it doesn't happen this year, it could be pushed off for half a decade. I mean, who knows? Things move so slowly. So I don't know what the next administration's appetite will be. So I think it's a craps. 50-50 is probably a reasonable assumption.
Yeah, I think to your point about vertical integration, and we've had guests that are vertically integrated, and they share exactly what you say. It's 3 different businesses or more and completely different skill sets. And you're right that we don't have any other industries where it's we also don't have any other industries where there's tax benefits to doing that, right? Or there's lower tax rates for different, not tax rates, but taxable income for different pieces of the supply chain. So I think to your point, some of that could change as well with the reschedule, where there won't be the tax benefit of being a cultivator manufacturer versus strictly into retail. Yeah. So Kevin, what is it like to work with you, or for someone to get started? Can you kind of just take us through that, what the process is like?
Yeah, I mean, look, our customer base is it's been a crawl, walk, run. And I think that there's been a lot of discussions and talks, and I think most growers are aware of tissue culture as a solution. But rightfully so, like anything in this space, they're apprehensive about jumping 2 feet in. So it becomes a very crawl, walk, run, where they end up purchasing a handful of plants from us. We spend a significant amount of time and money on our customer success team to make sure these customers have the very best experience in the onboarding, and that the plants perform, and that we're tracking them along the cycle, the plant's life cycle. And then at the end of it, right, the feedback is usually overwhelmingly positive. Great performance. We're happy with the performance of the plants. We're happy with your customer success team. The price is reasonable. Let's do another order. And it kind of just evolves into this, hey, we want to clean up some of our genetics. Can you clean them up and bank them as an insurance policy, and then provide us some of ours back? We want to see better pricing. If we guarantee you a certain amount of plants per year, can we get better pricing? And so our relationships are really kind of an evolution over time. It's not a one-time sale.
So Kevin, as we look towards the future, what gets you excited? What do you have your eyes on, 5-10 years down the road that just keeps you going?
Yeah, look, if you look at, there's a couple ways to answer this. I think just conception and our growth, we doubled our revenue between 2022 and 2023. We hope to continue that trend. Again, we're seeing this problem around pest, disease, degradation, and performance only becoming bigger. We have a team in Portugal right now that we're looking to expand to an international footprint. We're working with a handful of large grows around the country that want to bring tissue culture in-house, because I can't ship across state lines. We have to build a little mini lab inside their grow. So really excited for the expansion of conception, and eventually getting genetics into the larger international community. I think just for an industry, I'm very excited about the evolution of the industry. I think more states and countries coming online, it only legitimizes what we're doing, and continue to see this really healthy kind of year-over-year growth.
Well, we're getting close to the end, Kevin. Is there, like you said, most folks are familiar with this, especially in the industry. What are some ways that they could continue to learn more about tissue culture, in terms of just really diving in and getting an understanding? Is there educational webinars or ways for people to dive more into this and really want to learn?
Yeah, great question. There's a handful of folks that do tissue culture seminars and training, hands-on training. We don't offer hands-on training for non-conception employees, but we will offer tours to groups that want to come through and tour the facility and see what a state-of-the-art tissue culture lab that has a capacity of, call it north of 7 million plants a year. And we're always happy to provide either a video walkthrough or an in-person tour. But there's a lot online, and you can learn quite a bit on our website also. That's conceptionnurseries.com.
All right. And in terms of meeting with you in person, are there any events that your team going to be attending within the next couple of months, or where can people find you?
Yeah, we're always at Benzinga. We're a great supporter of. We'll be at MJ BizCon. There's a handful of California specific events that we like to attend, Hall of Flowers, and a handful of others. So welcome to reach out on our website, and we'll let them know where we're at.
Okay. And then you as well personally, is LinkedIn the best way to find you?
That's it. Yes, sir.
All right. Well, good. Well, I think this has been a great episode. Obviously a big topic, a lot to learn about it, but I think our listeners are really going to benefit, especially those who are maybe new to the industry or just starting to learn on this side of the business. But you shared a lot with us today. We really appreciate your time. Do you have any final thoughts to share with our listeners, or anything you'd like to close us out with?
No, I think it's great interview. Appreciate the time. It's good to meet you both. And feel free to jump on our website or shoot us a note if you'd like additional information.
Well, thank you, Kevin. And I think that's all we have for today. And I want to just thank everyone for joining us on the Cannabis Success Show.
Thanks, guys. It's good to be here.
All right, thank you.
Enjoy this podcast? Visit our website, anderscpa.com/virtual-CFO-cannabis to get more tips and strategy for achieving business success in the cannabis industry.